privilege of speaking with a number of you and before this, and amongst the things we've talked about, I have it here, I believe. I carry this with me, not because of my party affiliation, but because it has a picture of me with hair, lots of hair. This is my green card. So I am actually an immigrant myself. I was born in Prague and came here when I was 16 months old. And my parents got to live the dream, as Dan said. They came in, we were in the quota. They got to live the American dream, which is not to become a billionaire. The American dream is to have your children go to school, get an education, go to college, find a good job, become part of the middle class. That's what we need to do again. And there are bills, and I would back them. Representative Gutierrez has one, I believe, and I agree. We must, as Dan said, secure our borders and also implement E-Verify the way it was meant to be implemented. Very quickly, to talk about those who are here, this is where I don't agree with Dan. We invited people to come here to work, and we've taken advantage of them. Our employers, there's case after case, our employers taking advantage of people who are undocumented immigrants here. We invited them here, and we have to have some way to get them to become citizens the way the rest of us had legally.
We're going to talk a bit more about immigration so you can expand more in your answer as it relates to this question. And Congressman Delaney will start first. Do you support a path to citizenship for immigrants?
I do, under a number of conditions, and the conditions that are outlined in the Senate bill are what I support. Which is obviously, if people have come to this country and have committed crimes or engaged in illegal activities, obviously those people should have no path to citizenship in the United States of America. But for the other undocumented residents of this country, many of which are children, many of which came here when they were 1, 2, 3 years old, right? Wasn't their choice to come here. They were brought here by families. They've done everything right. In many cases, you know, they fully engaged in work, gone to school, paid taxes, done all those things. There ought to be a path. And the reason a lot of them are here is because we did not enforce our immigration laws and we did not enforce our borders, right? Which is inexcusable. We didn't do that as a country, which is why it's so important that we do it going forward, which again, the Senate bill that's been approved in the U.S. Senate has significant resources towards increasing the investment, both physical and technological, in securing our border. But for the people who are here, who haven't done anything wrong, a very large percentage of them were born here as children, right? These little kids carried here. If they haven't committed any crime and they're willing to get in the back of the line and wait for however long it takes, 13 plus years, to work through the immigration system, I do support a pathway for them having citizenship. To think that we're going to deport those 11 million residents of our country, many of which, again, came here as children, to think we're going to deport those people, I think is both immoral and really bad bottom line for this country.
Yes, I agree with almost everything that Congressman Delaney said. We absolutely do not want to keep folks here who are criminals in any way. They should be deported. But the one thing we left out was one law that has not been implemented, and that's the one that deals in some way, tangentially, with E-Verify. There are employers, again, I repeat, who basically invited folks over, creating a demand for foreign workers to come here illegally, sometimes paying them what they said, often not paying them what they said they would, often having crimes committed against them one way or another, and of course these folks are not willing to make themselves known to the police. So the law that hasn't been implemented is the one that says if you hire somebody illegally, you should go to jail. Nobody has, well, virtually nobody has gone to jail for hiring somebody. And there are ways E-Verify has been improved, and so that there's absolute, almost ironclad ways of making sure that the people you hire are not undocumented. So that has never happened, or virtually not happened. I've looked and couldn't find any certainly large employers have been employing undocumented workers and have paid for it legally.
Couple of points on this. We already have a path to citizenship. You know what it's called? Citizenship. My wife did it. This is the only violation of a law where it's discussed in terms of sympathy or compassion for the people who decided to break it, not the people who suffer the consequences of it. I think I'm relatively confident I'm the only person on this panel who's actually deported someone as a federal agent. It's not a pretty process. No one takes any pride in it. Yes, this is a magnet for people to come here. Thank God it is. But ladies and gentlemen, there are very real consequences to a system where we just absolve people of a violation of the law. Think about it. I remember when I first moved here, about 13 years ago. There was an individual I became friendly with, did a lot of work for us around the house. He was from Ecuador. And he told me that his business was being destroyed because people were coming into the country illegally from the same region he had come from and undercutting his business. There is a path to citizenship. The law is clear. We can't just ignore it. That sets up incentives, think about it, for other people to do the exact same thing. And I'll leave you with this. How's that fair to my wife? Do we get a refund? Do I get my $10,000 back and the 2 years of our lives spent jumping through hoops to do the right thing? I don't agree with Obamacare, but I don't get to ignore it. How come other folks get to ignore the law and get a reward for it? These are real questions in a very real world. This isn't Pollyanna here.
Mr. Gluck will be first on this next question. So we've talked about economic development here locally, transportation, a bit about immigration, and now we're going to talk about environmental issues. What proposals do you have on environmental issues related to business and agriculture?
Sorry, what was that?
What proposals do you have on environmental issues related to business and agriculture?
I'm a computer consultant, and over the last few years, I spent a lot of time going from Rockville up toward Baltimore, or near BWI. And there's a farm there along the way that has, I never stopped to count them, so I'm going to take an estimate, probably 200 solar panels. Many people in the area buy their turkeys, so we'll be buying them shortly for Thanksgiving. The turkeys are just beginning to grow. They're allowed to walk all over the farm and grow nice and fat, not an industrial farm. I'd like to say about 4 years ago they put solar panels up. I'd like to encourage that kind of thing everywhere. I assume there are enough solar panels there for them to power the entire farm. My wife and I have solar panels on our roof. We heat our water that way and generate half the electricity we use that way. I'd like to encourage that, as we started to do under Jimmy Carter way back when. We promised we wouldn't use any more oil than we did back in '78, I believe it was. I propose to do that. Wind farms, we have something going on here in Maryland. I think something like the order of 12% of the electricity generated in Texas now is generated from wind farms. So there's a lot we can do to encourage business to be more environmentally friendly.
A couple of things on this issue here. The ag community in Maryland is vital. It's about 15% of the state's jobs. They've been just suffocated by regulations. Now, listen, everybody needs red lights or a form of regulation. You think about it, if you didn't have red lights, if T-bone accidents and intersections. But I think we've gone way overboard. I think any reasonable person can say that. Whether at the state level, we have phosphorus regulations in Plan Maryland. Our farmers can't do the one thing they do best, and that's actually produce the food you're looking at right now. You have to ask yourself, do you want to eat or not? There are simple things we can do at the federal level. Obviously, we have a microphone if we're elected to hopefully influence state policy, but at the federal level, we need a hard cost-benefit analysis of any EPA regulation and a sunset provision put into any regulation so we can reevaluate it over time to ensure that it's doing what it was stated. And when we talk about a cost-benefit analysis, it's very difficult to put things in there like social costs because the government gets to just evaluate that however they feel. We should include hard metrics like capital costs. We're at the point now, folks, we're actually regulating farm dust. That's in the hopper, farm dust. So if you're on a ranch or if you're on a farm and you drive down the road, you create some dust? Do you want a government bureaucrat following behind you with a dust meter saying, oh, listen, you better ease up on that farm dust? You know, someone may actually breathe that in. Well, I breathed in a lot of dirt in my time traveling around with the president on farms. So we have to get off the farmers' backs.
Congressman Delaney.
So, you know, I care about this issue a lot for two reasons. One, as someone who ran a business, I had to deal with multiple regulators at times, and you realize how ridiculous it gets because you're kind of in a lowest common denominator situation. And we definitely see that here in Maryland with federal regulations and state regulations overlaying on each other and making it really hard to do business. And I do think Western Maryland farmers have not had a sufficient voice at the table or seat at the table with respect to policy in Annapolis. And it's one of the reasons that I've tried to be such a strong advocate for them. I've had all kinds of meetings with farmers in Western Maryland, hearing their concerns. We're putting together a Western Maryland agenda for the next legislative session in Annapolis. Even though it has nothing formally to do with my job in Congress, I can use this position to shine a spotlight on issues that need attention, just like I did when I felt like the governor didn't do the right thing after the floods that occurred here in Washington and Allegheny County. And we pushed them hard and we got them to provide some relief finally, just like I went after Annapolis over the healthcare website that they rolled out, which was a disaster. So standing up for farmers in Western Maryland is really important to me. There is too much regulation. I heard about someone the other day who was collecting shavings from a sawmill for 30 years to use for creating beds for horses. And now someone from Annapolis came and said they can't do that anymore because of what's in the shavings at the sawmill. It's ridiculous. And so we need to be standing up. I think cost-benefit analysis does make sense, and I think we really have to make sure there's not a lot of overlap in regulatory enforcement.
Thank you. We're coming down to the home stretch. We have two more questions and then closing statements. And for this next question, Mr. Bongini, you will go first. What is your opinion on term limits for members of Congress?
Wow, doing me a softball there. I'm sure I'm the only one on the panel who's publicly committed to term limits. I've limited myself to 3 terms, 6 years in Congress. If you can't get it done in 6 years, you can't get it done. Sadly, living behind the walls of the 18-acre complex, you see what happens to freshman members of Congress who come in as idealistic change agents and leave as sold-out agents of some lobbyist on K Street. Contract is public. I ask people to sign it with me. I think we've had 1,500 signers committed to 3 terms. That's a hard promise. It's a public promise. I will not serve any more than that. After about 6 years, I find that the influence of money, of potential fame and fortune later on, we have enough political celebrities. It's time right now for public servants. So I think term limits are vital. I would love to see a constitutional amendment on term limits. I don't know if that's possible. I would certainly support one, but I have publicly committed to no more than 3 terms, and I mean it.
Thank you. Congressman.
Yeah, Dan's not the only one to come out for term limits. I've also come out for term limits. In my first race for office 2 years ago, I put out a platform around ethics, and I called and committed myself to 6 terms, which is 12 years in Congress, which would also apply to the Senate and give senators 2 terms, because I thought it should be symmetrical between the Senate and the House, that they both should have the same. So I'm 100% supportive of term limits. You know, there's a lot of research done on how long it takes to become an expert at something. A guy wrote a book called The Outliers, and he said that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything, unless it involves incredible cognitive abilities. So that means it takes about 4 years to become an expert at being a legislator in the U.S. Congress. So you don't need people in this place for 15 or 20 years to have the quote institutional knowledge. So I think 12 years is the right amount. I've also got a broader ethics platform. I've voted to extend the ban on people's ability to go and lobby Congress to 5 years. I voted for no pay if we don't get a budget, the members of Congress don't get paid. And I also have a very comprehensive election reform bill that makes Election Day a holiday so more people can vote, sets in place national standards for redistricting, so you can't have the kind of gerrymandering that's gone on here in Maryland, and it makes primaries open so that independents can vote in primaries. Right now, the state of Maryland has 20% independents, up from 12%, and they have no say in the election process. So ethics in Congress is a big platform of mine.